I want you to picture this for a moment. A quiet home, a familiar routine, the kind of place where nothing ever seems to go wrong. Now imagine that same space becoming the center of a murder investigation. One that no one saw coming, and one that would leave an entire community asking the same question. How could this happen? Let me take you back. The victim in this case was 64-year-old Sheila Tenpenny. She was known as a kind, dependable woman who valued her routine and her independence. The kind of person who built her life around simple things. Her home, her neighbors, and the quiet rhythm of everyday living. There was nothing unusual about her life, no known enemies, no signs of conflict. And that's what made what happened to her so deeply unsettling, because when violence enters a life that peaceful, it doesn't just shock people, it confuses them. Here's the thing, cases like this don't always start with obvious danger. Sometimes, the threat comes from somewhere much closer than anyone expects. In the days leading up to her death, nothing seemed out of place. Sheila was going about her normal routine. There were no distress calls, no warnings, no signs that anything was about to change. Until it did. When Sheila was found inside her home, it was immediately clear to investigators that this was not a natural death. Something had happened, something intentional. The scene told a quiet but disturbing story. There were signs of a struggle, evidence that Sheila had tried to defend herself. But ultimately, she had been overpowered, and just like that, the investigation began. At first, detectives approached the case the way they always do. They looked at the immediate circle: family, friends, neighbors, anyone who might have had contact with her in the days before her death. But nothing stood out. No clear motive, no obvious suspect. And that's when the case took a turn. Because as investigators dug deeper, they began to focus on someone most people wouldn't immediately suspect: a 13-year-old boy. Now let that sink in for a second. 13 years old. At first, it didn't seem to make sense. Someone that young, connected to a crime this serious? It challenged everything people assume about age and violence. But the evidence started to build. Witness accounts placed him near the home. Timelines began to align. And when investigators looked closer at his behavior before and after the incident, they noticed something that didn't sit right. There was a level of calm, a detachment, that raised questions. When he was brought in for questioning, what initially seemed unlikely began to feel more real. His story had inconsistencies, small ones at first, but enough to matter. And as the pressure of the investigation increased, those inconsistencies became harder to explain. Eventually, the truth started to come out. He admitted to being there, inside the home. What investigators uncovered was a situation that escalated quickly. A confrontation that turned into something far more serious than anyone could have imagined. I'm not going to go into graphic detail, but what matters is this: Sheila Tenpenny lost her life inside her own home, at the hands of someone no one expected. And that's what makes this case so difficult to process. Because when we think about danger, we tend to picture something obvious. Someone older, someone with a clear motive, someone who fits a pattern we recognize. But this case didn't follow that pattern, not even close. As the investigation moved forward, the focus shifted to understanding why. What leads a 13-year-old to commit an act like this? Was it impulse, curiosity, something deeper? Something that had been building over time? These are the kinds of questions that don't have easy answers, and they're the same questions that would follow the case into the courtroom. Because when the suspect is a minor, everything becomes more complicated. The legal system has to balance two realities at once: accountability and age, responsibility and development. In the end, the case moved through the juvenile justice system, where the focus wasn't just on punishment, but also on psychological evaluation and long-term supervision. But no outcome, no sentence can undo what happened, because at the center of this case is a woman who lost her life, a home that was no longer safe, and a community that was forced to confront something deeply unsettling: the idea that sometimes the people we least expect are capable of the most unexpected actions. Sheila Tenpenny's story is not just about how her life ended, it's about how she lived. She was someone who valued peace, routine, simplicity, and maybe that's why this case resonates the way it does, because it reminds us that safety isn't always guaranteed by familiarity, and that awareness, paying attention to the small things, matters more than we realize. And that's the part that stays with you.